Hi, I'm iKia, and for today's video, I want to give an in-depth guide into my macros, but also a little bit into macros in general, as I recently wrote a guide, and that includes, of course, also links to those macros, and these are very simple macros, to make that clear. This is just for opening up apparel caches, buying from vendors, or crafting, or such. There aren't anything really meaningfully impactful, and that's also, of course, kind of important, as technically any third-party program being ran to alter inputs or such into Division is technically against the rules, but it hasn't ever been enforced. And I've been using these for forever, and honestly, these should just be in the game as they are. Although, well, they should just be sliders in the game where we just select by 150 instead of having to go do that with a macro or doing it by hand, which ain't nobody got time for that. But yeah, you should be known that it is technically against the rules, but there is no enforcement against this. And as such, I'm also perfectly fine in sharing these. And yeah, we'll be sharing 6 of them today, as they are part of this guide that I kind of put together quickly, just to kind of have in words as well what we're kind of basically going to show today. Because in the first part of this video, we'll kind of go over all these macros and show how to use them, because you do need to be in specific places basically and set up before you start the macro. And in the written guide as well, it kind of lays that out. Also, we'll talk about what the macro is actually doing, of course. And then in the second part of the video, we'll actually go over how you can alter these, because sometimes you will need to, as they are mostly based on timings and such, that can alter between system to system. I've kind of, especially with the ones that I'm sharing here, I've kind of set them a little bit too long, actually. So you could actually alter it to be faster for yourself, although we're talking about 100 milliseconds difference per loop. But that could still, be handy. Or if you have, for instance, a system and you're running with even worse, maybe worse internet or worse frame rates, that can impact that, and you will need to lengthen them. But yeah, we'll go over that in the second part, and also I should kind of lay out into how to maybe even alter them to do other things. So yeah, let's go get started by just going through the guide. Let's start out by kind of talking about the guide itself first. As I made a quick guide, written guide. This is only going to really touch on the macros we're going to go over today, not per se editing the macros or such. This lives now in the guides folder, as all my other guides do. And I'll link, of course, to the guides folder. We'll link directly to this guide. And also even I'll link to the folder where the macros are in. For all of the macros, they are actually, the links are here. If you just click the blue text, basically you will download it. And yeah, they're already set up as HK files, so they can be run by Autohotkey. But first, let's get started by actually discussing what macros are. We'll zoom in a little bit. And what macros are tools that can help with repetitive tasks. These macros are simple tools that just input keystrokes and mouse clicks to do a variety of things, like buying from vendors repeatedly or crafting repeatedly. These will only work for PC users, as we're kind of using mouse and keyboard inputs. We kind of need a PC for that. Sadly, there's no real way to make these work on console, although maybe on console with third-party tools you could, if you can just make repetitive key presses happen in some ways, that could already be enough. Even for instance, just an auto fire kind of setup. And these also require Autohotkey. That's kind of the software that we're kind of running this in. The scripts need to be ran through the software, basically. So you do need to install Autohotkey, which is the program used to run these. It is required to be installed beforehand. Also, importantly, this guide focuses on macros made by me and Dreamej, not per se general macro setup. And we're kind of, in the written guide especially, just going through guides that are kind of made by me, and very much helped out by the Dream, kind of help coming in and cleaning them up and actually adding a lot of functionality to them, and even making several of his own, which we'll highlight in a little bit. But very much thanks to Dream for helping and actually improving these quite a bit, and just of his own volition, which I appreciated quite a lot. Let's go on to Autohotkey, as that is the program that we run everything of these through. as the text says here, Autohotkey is a program that allows simple text, .txt, files to be run through it, and it will do what is set up in those files. It should be downloaded off of the official site here, and yeah, you should really only download this off of the actual official site as we link it there. You go here, Autohotkey, the main site, the download button is right there. You click it, download version 2.0, just to have all of the functionality that is here. And once you've downloaded this, you need to install it. Once it is installed, it will, as we continue on back here, once it is installed, it will automatically associate .ahk files to be run as script/macros once installed. And that is the format that I'm using here. So yeah, you need to have Autohotkey installed, and then you can run these .ahk files. And also, yeah, watch out about using .ahk files from any untrusted sources. These can be used to harm you or your system, because within these scripts, it's not constrained too much. A person wanting to do harm could do so, and they have access, yeah, to basically a lot of things. So be sure to, if you're running any AHK files, that you kind of trust the source that they came from. And on to the controls, because that's kind of the same for all of these. All of the following macros are set up with the same controls. This is just done through the macro itself. You can set up controls in them. This isn't just for all Autohotkey files. After starting the Autohotkey file, any of the Autohotkey files that are listed here, the controls are F2 to start the macro, because yeah, it loads up, it doesn't automatically start. You need to press F2 to actually get it running. That's just to make sure that you can double check that you're on the right item you want to buy or on the right item that you want to craft. F3 to reload, and this is which can be used to pause it but not quit the macro. So yeah, it is basically, it just resets the macro. It doesn't actually close it, but so you can run it again. So for instance, it's used when buying in between, like once you're full, you go to deconstruct them. So you press reload to just pause it for a second, go and deconstruct them all, and then continue on buying more. And F4, which will close the macro. And these buttons have been chosen because it doesn't seem to get in the way with a lot of other if you have running some softwares or such. But for instance, yeah, usually F12 is, for instance, some of the screenshot keys, for instance, and such. F1 sometimes might, if you're in the browser, might bring up help and such. So just to avoid that, so F2 to start it, F3 to reload it, and F4 to close it. Also to see the on-screen display, because yeah, all of these have an on-screen display, which shows the name of it and also the controls again. To see the on-screen display, you do need to be in windowed mode. Also, if you are in windowed mode, which is beneficial to do so with these, you also, once you open the macro, it actually swaps over to the game automatically. You don't have to open it and then select the game. And this was a great addition by Dream. And that can quickly be done by pressing Alt-Enter. So Alt-Enter will take you from full screen to windowed mode and back pretty quickly. And this can be in general use. This is just a general setup. Of note is that you generally need, if you have an Alt-GR on your keyboard, usually the right Alt, that doesn't work. You need to use just Alt, which is the left Alt, and then Alt-Enter. Now, actually, on the monitor, it actually jumps over right away. On the capture, it takes a second to go to and fro. And in doing so, yeah, we get that it is now in windowed mode, and it will show the on-screen display. Also, yeah, it will auto-swap to it. If you're not doing it in windowed mode, it will actually, yeah, it will kind of go into opening the game, then the overlay comes up, so the game goes away. It's just an extra step along the way. So just hit Alt-Enter, basically, as part of the controls. And yeah, you can just toggle to and fro, which is important because you can go back to full screen if you, like me as well, kind of enjoy going full screen with the game. And yeah, let's go to the first of the macros here. And yeah, this is the Apparel Cache macro. And as it says, opening Apparel Caches macro When you click this link, this will actually take you, as all of these live in Google Drive, it will take you to a Google Drive page, basically, and just, there's a download button there. You press the download button, it'll download it. You will need to, and yeah, with all of these, first we list where you exactly need to be to start this macro. So in this case, you will need to be in the Apparel caches menu and have the normal Apparel caches selected. So we need to be on those, and then we start the macro. With all of these macros, it doesn't matter where you exactly start them, because yeah, that applies. For instance, here, that will open these caches, because it will error out if you have some other things. Macro that will open Apparel caches continuously. This version is set up to utilize the tab switching method, which we'll show in a little second, which is much faster than the normal method. And even without macros, that is so much faster as well, even for consoles. We've shown it in things and stuff. I'll show it here again, and somewhere in the future, I might even make a short about it. And yeah, this macro is pressing, as we'll list with all of these, exactly what button presses is doing, just in case you want to maybe mess around with it or kind of understand what they're doing. But yeah, this is pressing and holding X long enough to open a cache. Once the animation has started, it will press first E and then Q. So it will wait for the starting opening animation. Once it hits opening, it plays another animation. Once it is actually set opening and played that kind of that sound file that plays, from that point, actually, the cache has already been opened. You can actually tab switch and back and open the next cache. And that will skip, of course, a bunch of animations. But yeah, so here, E and Q to cancel the animation by switching tabs. And then it will press S several times, as some people will have legacy caches and such that it needs to go past. So I'll show that is an issue for me specifically, for instance. The way that this macro is set up, it will not delete characters if you delta. This is an important one, because long press X and then spacebar, which this macro doesn't have, to be clear. This macro is safe. Other macros, if they are long pressing X and then spacebar, that's also a macro to delete characters. So if you were to delta for any reason and then load back in, and it is still running on the character select screen, it's just going to one by one delete characters, which you don't want to happen. But yeah, as there is no spacebar press, so it is safe to use. This one does not have that because we're using the tab switching method. Let's actually take it into the game. And here I'll first show actually the tab switching method by itself, because you can even use this on controller, where you can use the, I believe it is the shoulder buttons to go from tab to tab. So we're long pressing here to open it. And once this opening animation already starts, we can actually go to the next tab and back, and then go and open the next one. And this by itself is already, as you can see, much faster. I'm not macroing it here. I'm just doing the button presses by hand. And you could do this on controller as well, just to open up a lot faster, because otherwise it will, of course, open, this whole animation, reveal item, you need to reveal item, and then from here, another press, and then you can open the next one. So instead of all that, we're swapping tabs once it is basically ready. Once it says that animation, or like it says opening, that's where you can already tab swap. As we were talking as well, some people have multiple items extra in here. So a lot of people will have this legacy apparel cache things, and you may not want to convert them, even though you can kind of just convert them to standard caches. But yeah, they're kind of in the way. But for instance, in my case, even I'm extra rare with this event apparel caches here, which normally you shouldn't be able to have extra keys than the caches that existed. There were some weirdness with specifically this Nexus apparel one, where they gave out the free keys pretty like a week into it. By that time I was already done, so I got the keys after I was done. So, but I'm keeping them just for nostalgia's sake. I could convert them, but yeah, I'm choosing not to. So yeah, that's why there's several down presses, basically S's in there, just to go down this list. You could actually cut those out if you're opening dozens of caches, hundreds of caches maybe. It is just a few milliseconds extra, those S presses, but yeah, those add up, of course, if you're opening thousands. And yeah, we'll show actually how to do that in the end part of this video, where we'll kind of discuss in how to alter any of these macros that you need. Let's actually start up this macro. So yeah, I'm going to go into the folder that these macros live in for me. Of course, already downloaded it. Autohotkey is installed. I'm going to double click this, and actually when I double click this, we're already in windowed mode, as we were kind of discussing earlier. So I've pressed Alt Enter to get into windowed mode. And because we're in windowed mode, it will work correctly, which will, when I double click this, it will actually swap to the window of Division 2, and then also, yeah, show up the overlay. And that's kind of nice and a pretty good addition by Dream. You do need to, though, be in windowed mode for that to work that way. If you're actually in full screen mode, it will kind of open it up. It will actually bounce back to that folder, and then you just have to go to the game. The controls still work, everything still works, but yeah, it's a little less clean, and there's no good way to overlay onto a full screen game. And yeah, once we're here, as we talked about in the guide, we need to have the apparel caches selected. So yeah, we need to be on this item, and then we hit F2 to start it. And once we start it, it just starts and it goes. And as you can see, the timings on it are a little bit loose because yeah, we could actually tab a little bit earlier, but I leave a little bit of a gap. I'd rather this be safe and just continuously work. Instead of it being like perfectly timed. But you could definitely work on the timings. The thing is also, depending on, well, what seems to be frame rate and also some network latencies and such, the timings aren't the same for everybody. So some people could maybe do this faster, and if you can, yeah, check that end section where we kind of discuss where you can play with the timings and you could play around with it. Also, for instance, here as well, you could remove those S presses if you don't have that. And even then, for instance, here it's still actually failed there, for instance, to tab switch after the item opened. Sometimes that will happen, but yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of fine. And yeah, if we want to pause it, that's what that reload is for. So yeah, we press F3 there, we pause it in effect, and we have to then restart it. So the restart then does mean, for instance, yeah, if you caught it at a weird moment and it's, for instance, doing its tab switching and stuff, so it's maybe even on that tab, or like there, it was on a different item, we do need to set it again on the right item and then start it up again. Because otherwise, yeah, if we started on the wrong item, like here, yeah, there's no escape press in here. I didn't want to have to put that in there. So yeah, it doesn't actually work this way. So we would need to manually press that, even though the script was still, for instance, running there. I just closed it by clicking the mouse on it, and then it goes again. As an extra tip, one of the things you can do actually is to, if you're running this, and for instance, what I do is I quite often run this on either a laptop so that I can use my main system, but even, for instance, in a dual screen setup or something, you could actually have, you know, YouTube or some video or some music on the other screen. The game needs to be the active window because that's where the inputs are going, of course. So it doesn't need to be the selected thing. So you can't, you know, just have this running and on that same system kind of be doing other stuff, not unless you're doing some virtual machine shit, which you could, definitely. But yeah, for instance, in my case, I quite often run it on a different system, and then I just kind of monitor it while I'm working on my main system. Or yeah, I have it just running like this, and then I have YouTube over there, for instance. And yeah, you can have that, and then you can use the reload to kind of pause if you need to like swap videos or such. And as a tip for that as well, you can just turn off the in-game sounds. So you just go into the audio settings, turn off the in-game sounds. That's actually pretty handy for all of these. If we go into settings here and just go in here and just turn off this master volume, just put it to 0. That way you don't have to hear all of this happening in your ear. And then, yeah, you can just be watching some video, or of course, you could just be fiddling on your phone while this goes, or, you know, just doing some chores, as I quite often do when I'm doing these. Yeah, let's go on to the next macro. Moving on to the next one, the crafting macro. Also a very handy macro to have. Again, the link is here. You click this to download the macro. And yeah, again, to set up where we exactly need to be, you will need to be set up in the crafting menu and be hovering the mouse on the item you want to craft. And that's important because, yeah, we're actually using a right-click crafting method. And yeah, macro for crafting at the workbench. This version is a fast version as it utilizes right-click crafting, which is substantially faster than holding X down. So normally we would long press X to craft an item. It turns out that actually you can right-click, and then, well, actually as a list here, the core of the macro is a right-click followed by an X press. And this X press actually, yeah, which will craft the item instantly, followed by an escape press to go back to the crafting menu again. So yeah, we're right-clicking, pressing X, which will actually craft that item. You don't need to click that menu to make it to craft it. So this works for everybody as well. And then it presses an X or presses escape to go back and redo this cycle. To show it in action here, of course, come to the crafting station. Just to show the method by itself, as it's actually kind of cool, and I even found something out today that I didn't know about it. What you can do, of course, is, normal crafting, you press and long press X, and then you go into here. What you can already do with this method already is, if you're bulk crafting, if you just long press X, the second it kind of tries to go for that, once the circle is complete and tries to move the camera, you can actually already press X or escape and kind of get out of it if you're just bulk crafting. What you can do, as we discovered a few months ago, or somebody actually kind of brought it forward, is you can right-click, bringing up this this menu, and you can actually, if you press this craft, you have to actually have a very crisp click. If you kind of just long press it, it oftentimes doesn't work. So if I kind of like just kind of leisurely press it, it doesn't work. You have to kind of crisply press it and release quickly. Then it will craft, and then of course, with this as well, we can do that and then escape back out. But what I actually learned today is that you can right-click, you can press X here. This will craft the item right away and then escape. So actually right-click X, escape, right-click X, escape, crafts already pretty quickly, even without a macro. Now, I'm not sure this is available on consoles. I'm pretty sure it isn't actually, as I don't think that right-click menu is available there. But for us PC players, even without a macro, just being able to just quickly do that is pretty handy. As well, actually, here, because my inventory is already a little bit full, let's go in here. So we crafted a bunch of weapons. If we go to that slot and we just want to, normally we would go through these and check them all and make sure it isn't the one that we're like after. Once we know that, what we can do actually here is click X and bring up this menu. In here, you can actually mark all as junk. What this does is any item that isn't favorited will be marked as junk. So do make sure that all of the items you want to keep is favorited, or maybe just craft on a watch alt or something where their inventory is completely empty anyway. And that way, you can't accidentally delete the wrong item, because this definitely could delete the wrong item. So watch out for that. But in my case, I'm pretty confident that I have all of the items that I want to keep favorited. It's only these items that are going. And then we can deconstruct them, of course. But that is a very handy mark all as junk. Now, let's actually do this, of course, with a macro. And if you're wondering why you would want to craft a bajillion of a thing, there is, for instance, the Lengmo chest, the Habsburg items, and sometimes even just for donating, because you could craft 20 of an item, for instance, with the improvised pieces for chest and backpack and stuff. The easiest way to actually get them completed, you would just craft 20 of them and donate them. But this doesn't actually keep count of how many, but you could keep count with the inventory up there. But let's actually go for, as we're kind of talking about, let's go for the Habsburg backpack, not the courier named one, but just the normal one for the headhunter. Now, as we're talking about with the macro, we want to select item. Our mouse needs to be on top of it because we're right-clicking on that item. Now, let's go actually select our macro. We'll open up this crafting macro as we were kind of talking about. It pops us again into the game, is ready to go. The overlay is over there with the UI. That way, it is actually working. And then, our mouse is on top of this. We'll press F2 and it'll get off and going and crafting. And it'll craft until your inventory is full or you run out of resources, whatever comes first. So in this case, it's going to likely be my inventory getting full. Once it is full, of course, it will actually, it will kind of be stuck in this cycle. So it doesn't do any harm to let it just keep going and, go do something else, go do some groceries and then come back. Now, of course, here again, we'll press F3 just to reload it, pausing the effect, keeping the macro still open. We could go, and then now, what I normally would do just to quickly sort them is, run over here, vendor sort them, as we often do. So we go through and just make sure, maybe I got super lucky there and got the exact item we're looking for. In this case, though, it doesn't appear to be. Now, as I went through as well, I marked them all as junk. I would deconstruct them, and we would go and try again. And the macro is still up. So when I go back to here, let's say now, just for brevity's sake, we want invisible hands instead. Because I didn't close the macro, I don't need to go and restart it. We reloaded it. I can go in here and craft a bunch of these, let's say. And when I'm done with it, we press F4 and it goes away and stops at that exact moment. So yeah, that's the crafting one in the bag. Let's move on to the next one as we go to the vendor macro here. And this is, yeah, buying from vendors as a macro. Again, the link is there. You can download this macro. And you will need to go to the vendor and have the item you want to buy selected. So you need to be in their menu, hovering, or have the item that they have highlighted, selected, basically. This one doesn't use the mouse or anything, so yeah, it just needs to be on that item. And this is, yeah, macro for buying en masse from vendors, so you can deconstruct those items for crafting parts. That's usually what this is used for. This version utilizes buy and equip instead of just buy, as yeah, it turns out that helps quite a lot. As it turns out, that's a lot faster. Credit to Heller, who's around our community Discord, who actually made me aware and us aware of how this can work. And yeah, it actually is quite an improvement. So yeah, much thanks to Heller there. This macro just spams spacebar followed by G press. So spacebar, a G, spacebar, G, and just spam those. Because of that, it will from time to time be too fast and toggle the compare view of the vendor. But that is, yeah, but that does not get in the way of buying. So it'll just sometimes do that. We'll see it actually in action in a second, and likely we'll do it a few times, but it doesn't get in the way. That's basically, yeah, it pressed G a little bit too fast, but it doesn't matter. It just brings up the compare version or puts it away. So, and yeah, in here as well, as an extra tip, once you're filled up, press F3 to reload, as we're going to discuss with the last one. Go into that item slot, plus X to bring up the inventory options again, and yeah, you can then mark all as junk. This will mark as junk any item in that slot that is not favorited, letting you easily deconstruct them all. It should go without saying that this should only be used if you have, if you are certain that you are not destroying actual items you want to keep. So for us to do that, we've of course come to a vendor. This vendor as well, actually, this week has Langmo available for us, because this is of course what this is kind of for. We can buy in bulk, deconstruct, and then use that with a crafting macro, for instance, to craft up a bunch of Langmo chests, for instance. Now in here, I'm actually on a watch alt on third account, or on the Nokia account. On this as well, I'm completely empty. There is no other items here. We're 0 out of 150. What they have actually on them is completely meaningless as well. So accidental deletions of actual good items will not happen here, which is kind of handy to do. That's why I usually do this on watch alts as well, as we'll have completely empty inventory, which means that we'll be able to buy like 5 or 150 at each, in bulk of this Langmo holster. One thing you can quickly do as quick maths of how much credits you would need for 150. You can just this one goes times 100, so this would be 560-ish and a little bit K in credits. It would be also for 150 then another half of that, so 280 K, so it's 560K plus 280K, which is 840K ish, quick maths. So, and then a little bit on top. So we need a little bit, 900K would be definitely enough. We'll be a little bit over that because we didn't take the full numbers. And then here, yeah, to show the buy and equip. So instead of just spamming spacebar, what you could do, or just spamming A, it turns out actually just by itself, and you can do this on controller then as well, although you need to get into a rhythm of it, is you can press spacebar to bring up the buy menu, and then actually this buy and equip, whatever button it's on, pressing that actually goes a lot faster than just that. So kind of when you get into a rhythm of it, you can actually make it go faster. And yeah, sometimes you will hit the other button too fast. They'll pop up this compare menu, but yeah, that doesn't matter too much because it doesn't get in the way at all. So yeah, you can kind of spam both and kind of, yeah, get through it a little bit faster. But the macro, of course, does it so much faster. Let's actually, yeah, clean up these items again. As we saw, the mark as junk, we'll use that to get these away. Because let's have, and let's make sure we have enough credits. We have more than enough credits. We'll set up on the item we want to get, and then, yeah, we'll bring up the buy vendor equip as we have it there. And we need to have the item selected. Our mouse doesn't need to be hovering over it or anything. We're not doing anything with the mouse here. But yeah, the item needs to be selected. It needs to be the selected item. And then, yeah, let's hit F2 and let it go. Every time that it basically pops out the compare, it went a little bit too fast and didn't actually like buy that one. But it is actually just spamming spacebar and G as fast as it can. And because of that, it is, yeah, as fast as it can go. And it just popping up the compare here and there is not of consequence because of that. It's just going as fast as it can. And yeah, this way, as you can see, is very quick. Actually, will be likely filled up before we know it. And this is quite the improvement. And very much, again, thanks to Heller for kind of bringing this forward and bringing this to our attention, because I was actually not aware of this one. This one was definitely today I learned, which doesn't happen often enough anymore in Division, sadly. But when it does happen, yeah, the dopamine hits pretty well. And pretty soonish, we'll either run out of credits or space, in this case space, because we made sure we have enough credits. Once it reaches this point, as a general tip as well, this is where I would just hit reload. This will just basically reset the macro, not closing it either, so we can just start it up in a second again. Because what we would normally do, of course, is go in here, and then with these items, of course, we don't need to check them. We're deconstructing them for their parts. We're going to mark all as junk. We're going to deconstruct them. I'm going to go back into the inventory or into this merchant's sellables. And yeah, we'll hit F2 again and off we go again. And yeah, this we would normally do 4 times. With the deconstruction of whatever 150 items you crafted, you can then basically have 5. You need 750 of these items, and then you can craft a full batch of 150. And crafting there as well, if your batch going into a batch of 150, is best done on an empty character. But yeah, here we'll stop the macro and let's go on to the next one, and that is this expertise upgrade macro. And yeah, again, the link is there. You can download this, and this one will, as you might expect, is used to actually not having to press the upgrading upgrading for grades on the weapon, expertise grades on the weapon. So you don't have to do it yourself, because yeah, doing that 25 times in a row or something, yeah, that can be annoying. And yeah, you will need to go to the item you want to grade. And be at the menu where it is upgraded, as we'll show in a second. This is a macro for applying expertise grades to gear, weapons, and skills. This one is also solely creditable to Dream, as I didn't have it hand in this one. He made this by himself, actually. Although, of course, yeah, in design they're very similar to the other ones. It's just it is a timed button press for this action. As he made this one and did the work to get the timings right. And makes upgrading expertise grades on items much less of a chore. This macro is just a long press timed to be long enough for its purpose, basically. If we take this into the game, and let's say I wanted to upgrade, for instance, this chameleon. Chameleon is pretty good nowadays, so yeah, let's give it a few grades on it. Now, of course, the thing to watch out for is, depending on how high we want to go, we want to stop it at a certain point, of course, because if you just let it go, it will go all the way to the top. Now, for expertise, of course, we bring up the tinkering menu by itself, because yeah, it isn't in the item itself, which I feel they need to change at some point, just so we can select the item, go to its tinkering menu, and alongside of optimization and recalibrations, that we can actually just select that item. Because yeah, going through this menu is always kind of an annoyance. But yeah, we need to go in here and we need to be at this menu, basically. The chameleon selected, the chameleon we want to have upgraded selected here. And yeah, once we have that, again, we'll go into our folder with all of these macros. We'll start the expertise one. It has the same traits. It'll come up again on that left side. It'll open up, I'll swap to the game if we're in windowed mode. And yeah, we can start it up. And of course, we need to have enough resources for all this, although if it runs out of resources, you just run out of resources. And for instance, in this case, I might not want to go to 27 or 28, as I have available here even. So we need to kind of stop it at some point, but then, you know, maybe we do the last one by hand. Although you can pretty much trust it that if you press F3, that, yeah, it will basically just stop at that point. So yeah, let's press that. And yeah, of course, normally, so actually, let's maybe reload it here. Normally, the thing you could do, of course, is yeah, if you press the button that it's on, it'll fill up that, it'll fill up this, and then it goes. What you can do already by itself, on PC at least, is just press the upgrade. You skip the long press there. So you just press the upgrade with the mouse, that'll go a little bit faster already. But it's very tedious to kind of do that by hand. And yeah, this macro makes it so much easier. So it's well worth starting this up, spooling this up whenever it's needed to get an item, especially if you're just going to the max anyway. And yeah, we'll hit F2 again, and we'll just let it run for a little bit. Of course, yeah, you need to have the resources, you need to have the exotic components, you need to have the, for instance as well, especially I run out quite a bit of receiver components whenever I need to do it. And yeah, we'll just let it go up and up. And of course, up to 12, we don't need to use any exotic components. After 12, we start using some exotic components. I do have a few saved up. I actually don't know how many. I'm pretty sure I have enough to get this item to, let's say, 20 in this case. And yeah, it'll just keep going by itself. So yeah, we do keep an eye on it. And especially because it is such a long press in that case, there's plenty of time to stop it once we've reached 19 or 20. We're gonna do this last step by hand, but actually in this case, I'll trust it enough. We'll go actually to 20, and then I'll hit the reload basically, or we could actually just exit out of it. But yeah, once we've hit 20 here, I'll hit the reload. It stops there, so that way you can keep an eye on it. And we could now, for instance, yeah, go and, you know, if we had a different item we wanted to maybe get to, you know, a few levels, let's say Strega, this way as well, because we didn't close it and just hit the reload, we can just, yeah, go and instead of going and opening it all up again, it is ready to go. That's what that reload is for. It's basically a pause. And yeah, we'll get a, let's say 5 on. Let's go for 10 on this Strega, or maybe let's go to 12 for this Strega. And yeah, this makes it so much easier to do these kind of things. That's what micros are also kind of for. And especially as well, if you have other places where you think, hey, this might be handy, yeah, well, first of all, maybe put it forward to us, we can help out with it. Or even, yeah, as we'll show in a second, these are pretty easy to alter and to make your own. Here at, once we've reached 12, I'll actually exit out of it. And yeah, we've done this one now as well. Of course, this still takes the time, but yeah, it takes the tediousness out of it. And especially if you're just going to 25 or well, 28 or whatever your max is at the time. Yeah, you can just leave it running and then come back to it, of course. Yeah, let's go on to the next. And lastly, but yeah, not least actually, is a spacebar macro. And again, you can download it from here. If you're considering why we would have an spacebar macro, it's actually usable for a lot of places, but yeah, usable for anywhere where you need to spam the spacebar. This happens actually more than you would think. Just a general macro that can be used for several things, like opening proficiency caches. While you click the open cache with the mouse, you would need to do that. Clicking the open cache part. Donating resources to expertise, which we'll show in a second, or even as an alternate way of buying from vendors, even though the buy and equip is much faster in Division 2. Yeah, the vendors in Div 1, for instance, yeah, this still works for them. So yeah, let's actually take it into the game where we've come to Emma Richards. Well, nobody visits her anymore because nowadays, of course, just from the inventory, we can bring up tinkering. So yeah, she doesn't get visited much. But in here, we can go to expertise. Now, actually, on this account, we've swapped accounts again. I'm actually not grade 28 anymore. We're now back to grade 27. Yeah, there's a few items I could proficiency. So, for instance, let's go into ARs. Let's go, actually, no, let's go with the LMG one. Let's go with, not goalie, but, of course, the other one, which is Rusty. I totally remembered. Let's go into the research, for instance, on this one. What we can do, of course, is donate materials to these. Now, normally, yeah, you don't want to donate all materials to this because it starts from the top, which is super annoying as it uses up all of those. Now, what we could do is, for instance, if I wanted to proficiency this item and I wanted to just use printer filaments, this macro actually comes today. So we'll go and actually open this up. Of course, load up the spacebar one. Once we have this item selected, I'm actually going to press the F2 button. And yeah, as you can see, this just kind of goes through and just uses this. And yeah, that's a handy way of getting that done. There's a bunch of places where just spamming spacebar is actually very useful. Same actually, I haven't gone and gotten a few proficiency caches, but for instance, for field proficiency ones, I can run that macro and I can be spamming the open one, and then I don't need to spam the spacebar as well for opening a ton of caches all at once. So still very useful, and especially for expertise like that, because that's 100 clicks. It is still insane to me that that hasn't been changed to maybe just take all of this resource or such, because even donate all resources, it starts at the top and eats up the resources you don't want to, because generally you want to just dump printer filaments into there. So yeah, that kind of rounds out actually, as we kind of saw, the complete list of macros here. But I do still, I want to give an extra, again, special thanks goes to Dreamej, who helped actually improve these. He added completely the overlay, the swapping over. He also cleaned up a bunch of things. Also, once we kind of learned vendor tricks of this one with the buy and equip, he implemented those very quickly, and I very much appreciated that because he has helped get these simple macros to something much more complete. And also for implementing some of the interesting ways we've recently found to improve them, and as well, even the expertise one is actually of his design. Also thanks to Heller for sharing that buy and equip method that improved that macro heavily, because that was that helped actually make that a lot faster. And now that we have a much faster buying macro and also a much faster crafting macro, it's actually much less of a hassle to go for the Habsburg pieces or go for the Langmo, at least if you are on PC. But also, and a further thanks to all the people that helped testing these and gave feedback. And also, if you have any feedback or ideas for further macros, feel free to share those on the community Discord, which can be found over here. And the link to the community Discord, where actually we discussed these quite a bit, and a bunch of people tried them out and made sure that the timings worked out and such. And also that did lead to us changing some of the timings here and there. Let's go to a final session where we actually go into the macros and I kind of show how they work, and then also how you can edit them. And to do that, let's briefly actually look at the macros and kind of what they are doing. And then also, show how to alter, at the very least, their timings. Because if the timings don't work for you, or if you want to improve them for your setup, because you could definitely take a little bit away, and as long as it still works on your system, they're kind of wide now, because, we're going for basically the lowest denominator, the lowest common denominator that we have available, and then, so it works for everybody, but you could definitely speed some of these up or even remove some of the button presses. Let's go maybe let's go with the apparel caches one. So we can right click them and actually in the open with. Now, I don't know if the notepad is instantly there, but otherwise, you just choose another app. You choose Notepad, that will definitely be in that list, as these are just TXT files underneath. So when you open it like that, or any Notepad like program that you want to use, like Notepad++ or something like that. And when you load this up, you'll see that they're kind of laid out pretty well, the work of Dream. And it starts out first with that part that actually makes it swap to the game. If the game is available, it just tabs over into it once you double click this, which saves, tabbing over back to the game. Then we have actually the section where it puts the overlay on. So this actually puts those tooltips on and kind of just, the reminder of actually what macro you're running. And then also like F2 to start it, F3 to reload it and stuff like that. Then actually is what used to be my old macros parts of it, although with a little bit of cleanup happening to them, as these parts used to be my contribution to it, and these used to also exist before all this, and these additions are very welcome to it. And what is happening here is actually, as you can see, so we have this F2, and also later on this F3 and this F4. Those are, of course, the parts where we're, actually it's behind my head, but that's, of course, the parts where, we're designating which button press actually does this. And here, as you can see, the F2 starts a looped script, basically. And the way that Autohotkey works is you can kind of see it by design there, where it is just inputs, so send and then between these brackets is where you put a key press, for instance. So in this case as well, we're doing an X down. So we're not just pressing X. You could actually just put X there. It would just press X. The thing is, it does so for basically as fast as it can, which is actually, it gets dropped usually as an input for division. So the division actually expects it to be actually, human timings. It needs to be pressed at least for a few milliseconds instead of like 0 milliseconds, like below a decimal point of a millisecond. So there is timings there, and then these timings, these sleeps in between is kind of the timing. So we're pressing, for instance, on this one, the X down. This is for that. This is apparel caches. It is going for 2300 milliseconds, so 2.3 seconds, of course. So when we have that, if this timing, for instance, isn't working for you, or if you want to make it a little bit faster because your system and your network can kind of run that, you can alter this to maybe be 2200. Maybe 2100. And each time, of course, you could alter this number. Make sure to save as well, because if you just alter it in here and then run the macro right away, because you could just open this and then when you run the macro, it just opens it up and it shows it up there. Now, of course, we don't want to run this here, so I'll F4 out. But the macro needs to be saved before you run it to actually have those things in there. So you need to go here, file, save, and then run it. Now, as you can see here, it's an X down and then it's an X up because any down press, later on we need to pull it back up, basically. And we're just using this 100, for instance, on this one as just kind of in between. As you can see here as well, it has 3 S down presses. Now, actually, even for myself, I just need 2, but just in case I put in 3, just in case somebody has even more weird things in their apparel cache menu. If you don't have anything, you could actually remove this whole section of S's and make it a little bit faster. So we would be, let's say 600 something, 660, 630. 660 milliseconds faster on the macro, because it's not doing those down presses. They are not needed if it's just that one item. If you have the legacy one, you keep one and then you drop the rest. Then as well, so on the F3 there, you see it's reload. That's just the command to reload. And here as well on the F4, and actually this is important for if you're kind of making macros for yourself. So the exit app is exit the app, as is behind my head there. But that's the exiting, that's just exits the current script, cuts it off. One handy thing to do, though, is when you close an app, before you do that, because if this S, if it basically, especially with this one, with the X down, which is long, this X down gets pressed. If you end the script at that point, basically, it wouldn't release that X. That X would still be pressed. So you might run into some issues because of that, because if you're not expecting it. Now, on on your system, once you close it, if you just press X once, it would release it, basically, because there's an up happening anyway. But it is handy to actually have all of the items that you have in here with downs, any button that goes down, to have that also go up with that F4. So this, what happens is basically it sends all of those, all of these, all the ups. So in the case that they are already released, that's not an issue, of course. But if they're pressed down, it will release them, making it a little bit more clean. For instance, here as well, we'll look into another one, which is, for instance, that by equip from vendor, by vendor equip. So same things at the start. Basically, the bulk of this is getting carried over, and it's especially the parts underneath here that are kind of changing. Now, again, we see loop, and we use loop just to, anything after this loop is going to get repeated over and over again. So if you want to have a script that just runs once, or maybe you want to just do 12 times of something, you could, you could loop 12 to have that happen that way. Now here, we have space down, space up, G down, G up, and actually with very aggressive timing. So this is 1 millisecond, 5 milliseconds. So it is going really fast, and that's also why it kind of like fails, but that's not an issue because it's still going as fast as it can. Because of that menu, it doesn't actually go slower whenever it does that menu, for instance. And then again, on the F3, we have the reload. On the F4, we have the space up and the space down. Now, especially for instance, on the crafting one, because maybe if that one, especially if that in some ways breaks, you would want to change these timings. So if it maybe is pressing escape too quickly, what you want to do is actually kind of understand first off, like where it is breaking. So for instance, if the escape is happening too fast, you would want to change the timing of sleep before it. So maybe you take this 300 to a 400 if the escape is coming in too quick and you're going back a menu too early. Now, of course, you could also speed this up if for your system it kind of works out better. And again, we're making sure that anything we've pressed down, we're also releasing at the end again. And all of these are actually pretty simple, as you can see. They're very they're not too complex here. Yeah, we're not going to save that. And yeah, you can change what key presses, of course, happen. For instance, yeah, on the spacebar one, it's very simple. It is a space down. 1 millisecond later, it releases it, waits 5 milliseconds, and does it all over again. Very simple. And if you, for instance, let's say you want to open caches in Division 1, which I think is a long F press and then a space press, yeah, you could very easily make that just by taking this on this part, making this an F, F down, F up, space down, space up. You would need to find out how long you need to keep down that F, because yeah, that one also has one of those things popping up and, you know, a circle filling up. So you would need to kind of figure out how long that is, but you can play around with that. You just set it, because for instance, if you expect it to be 1 second, that's 1,000 milliseconds. Maybe it's a second and a half. You try that one. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Maybe you need it to be longer if it doesn't. And then you go up actually in a little bit of increments, and then maybe you bring it back down to the point where it reliably works. And these are very easy to edit. That's the handiness of Autohotkey. It is very much very simple to edit them. And there's also on their website and such a lot of support. And they have a very active forum. They have a very active Discord. They have also very active, yeah, just people making tutorials for it and such. And also a very good manual for it, which explains everything. Letting you very easily make your own macros or mess around with other people's. And you could definitely use these as well from the start here, just by, yeah, just altering these. You can just put different buttons here, change the timings, mess around with it. Though, if you do put in the buttons, although that's more just for cleanup's sake, yeah, make sure to have them come back up as well. And especially this, what a lot of people kind of run into, but like don't understand, is especially you need, with a lot of macro software from let's say Logitech or something, as I have, the down presses and up presses of the keys are actually done slow enough, because they already know that a lot of, especially programs, if the button press is too fast, they will just ignore it. Division does that, for instance. So they have this built in. In Autohotkey, yeah, you do need to kind of do it like this quite often. X press down, maybe wait. Usually I have 100 milliseconds in between it, which is already fast enough. It's 1/10 of a second. Because for instance, on this one as well, this crafting one, we could definitely up the timings, make it go faster, but I've specifically increased the timings here a little bit, even actually after the kind of the final versions, just to make sure that it will work for everyone. Just so it's safe, because it's better to have consistency than to have to go for top speed. And sometimes it fails, because sometimes that it fails might be one of the times that you're like in the kitchen doing something and you come back and go like, I hope that everything would be done by now. But yeah, I hope that gave you some insights into this, and yeah, it's very easily editable. Now, the other parts, yeah, if you want to change the tooltips and stuff, you would have to kind of pay attention to what is happening, but just changing the wordings on them is very easy, of course. And yeah, if you want different commands as well, for instance, it's F2, F3, F4 maybe are for you linked to something that you don't want to have these be pressed for these, you can, yeah, put any button here. This could be, you know, any of the other Fs. This could be also, you can input, for instance, Alt plus a button or some such to make it a little bit more consistent for you. What you can do as well is, as I do have in that in the folder, with the other macros, there are also simplified versions of these, which do not actually have the overlay parts of it. And those can be handy, especially if you want to play around with them. And also, for instance, using the Spacebar one in Division 1. Yeah, this macro, the macro that we're using there kind of specifically is checking for Division 2. So yeah, it would still work, but yeah, it pops up an error and stuff before you can get in there. So these ones are actually set up in a different way where they don't have the OSD kind of things. So you can also use those if you prefer that and you want to use them in full screen. But yeah, you need to be aware of the controls and also be aware which one you're starting, for instance, because yeah, you don't have the on-screen display. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, as yeah, it turned out a little bit longer than I wanted, but that's kind of fine as we kind of went in depth. And also I got to explain a bunch of other things, a bunch of cool tricks that we can use in other ways. And yeah, this one was a very much requested, as I've sometimes used them on stream, these macros, and people were like, oh, could you share those? So in this case we did, and actually yeah, the Dream came in and kind of cleaned them up and made them so much better. And yeah, they're well worthwhile trying out. I'll make sure as well to put them in the resources channel in the community Discord, so you can find them there again, or of course through this guide. And they'll be up for the coming times. And as well, if I find anything better to add into this, maybe we'll do a follow-up, adding in some more macros or altering any of these. Now, of course, whenever you're watching this video, if you just go to that link, it'll be if, for instance, any of the macros have some issues or we need to increase the timings or something, yeah, that in the future might have already have been done. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do any and all of the algorithm things down below. It does help out, so I'll do that little bit of shilling here. For future videos, actually, we're likely going to go into a few minor ones just on several topics. For instance, yeah, actually, boundary cheesing is going to come up, and I do want to actually do a video on inventory management. And the next build showcase will be Refactor, and that'll likely come towards the start of April. And of course, yeah, we're kind of coming up on April with some April foolery. And yeah, I hope you join me for all those. But for now, as always, have a good night.